Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to a special Tuba Da Vinci live stream. So glad you could join us with your Sunday. Really appreciate all of you guys joining us. All right, so let's start with a little recap of kind of our week and what we've been up to. Our last video was on the toroidal prop design and how it's this cool new technology that could potentially save on a lot of money for the shipping industry. And there's a lot of questions and comments around how it might impact aircraft and propellers, drones, all kinds of stuff. That was a really cool video. You can check that out. We'll put a link to it, or we'll try to. Second, we were in Taiwan. Juan and I were in Taiwan. We covered this show called 2035 E-Mobility Taiwan. It was super cool. We had a video go out on Wednesday about that, kind of seeing some of the vendors and the suppliers that make all the products that we love possible, right? So we see the end product, but there's so many things that go in the supply chain. And Taiwan is an amazing country. I highly recommend you guys visit if you haven't. And check it out. We got a chance to kind of check out the TSMC headquarters and stuff. Really, really cool stuff. All right. So next week we have a video on Zipline, which Mark Rober had an episode on, which that was the coolest thing. And we kind of talked about how it might impact other things, especially transportation, medical, emergency, that sort of thing. Secondly, we have a really cool episode on a new battery, a portable power station, which will go out probably Tuesday. So stay tuned for that. Also, our solar system is finally up and running. For those of you guys that have joined in or know kind of our situation, we've been trying to go solar for a while, but the big hiccup always was our roof. When we bought this house and moved in, we knew we'd have to get a new roof, and it was expensive, right? So I had to start saving up on top of making the mortgage payments and everything else. Got the new roof last year. We got the solar panels up. We have a 11 kilowatt system. And by the way, Juan, that light is on right over my head. So we got the 11 kilowatt system installed, and now it's finally on and making us money. And I'll tell you right now, I've been waiting for this for a while. We'll get back to this here in just a minute, but SDG&E has been very frustrating for us. Our electric bill, gas and electric bill combined, is averaging $1,000 a month. And in the 3 months in 2023, we have paid $3,400 for 3 months of energy. And that comes on the heels of huge natural gas price hikes, just in time as California was seeing really cold weather, which is not normal, and people were running their heater more often. They jacked up the rates and stuff. It's a whole thing. It's kind of the motivation for why I'm doing this and why I've always recommended we take energy independence more seriously. And we'll get back to that here in a second. And this entire episode really is dedicated to that. So we have our system. I'll pull up some of the numbers really quick. But last time I checked, we have already produced 900 kilowatt hours of solar power in not even a month, just about 3 weeks or so. So we should be right on track to make 1,300 a month, which is kind of nice and right where we want to be. And also, these are some pretty cloudy days, so they haven't been perfect. And I think on a really good day, we'll be making closer to 60, and a bad cloudy day between 25 and 30, which is still decent, and we can survive off that. Our goal is to be net zero, right? So now we have the SPAN smart meter. Stay tuned for an episode on the SPAN. I freaking love it. This is the app. I check it out constantly. I think it's the coolest thing. We have our solar. Next up is the battery, and we'll cover all that on episodes. If you're a new subscriber, if you're a new viewer, subscribe, stay tuned. We're going to cover a lot of this stuff. But let's switch gears a little bit and talk about why going solar has just become something in the past, I've always kind of said, if you have the money, if you've saved up for it, you're ready to do something like it, do it. But increasingly, it's becoming something I think everybody should consider. And it's not just a financial reason anymore or an environmental one. Like maybe you want to save the planet and be carbon neutral. Maybe you want to save money. I think there's even more motivation now. In case you live in California, you know that it is now too late for net energy metering 3 or for 2. Now we're in a new phase called NEM3. So any systems that are now getting approved, not installed, but improved after April 13th, sadly, you're going to have the new plan where they're going to pay you way less money for excess production, which kind of sucks, but there are things you can do. First of all, get batteries. The key really will be, if you produce energy, store it yourself, use it in the night until the sun comes back up again. And if you can store enough energy to do that, you'll be in good shape. And we are planning on doing just that. Not yet, but we are planning to. So there's, in my opinion, there's kind of 4 things happening around the world and just in general that are going to make for really unpredictable, uncomfortable energy pricing. So if you've been looking at your energy bills and kind of been shocked or alarmed at how freaking expensive energy has gotten, I kind of have some bad news. I think, and I'm putting on my prediction hat here, I think things are going to get potentially even worse in the next coming years, right? First of all, there's just the global geopolitical implications. The war on Ukraine has caused energy prices to rise for quite a while. And I think if you live in Europe, for example, any commenters, any of our viewers from Europe, please let me know. Sound off. We'll put them on screen. But you've seen your bills already on the rise. And I think what you've learned is just how dependent parts of Europe are on Russia, for example, for natural gas. And while it never mattered before and you're paying a comfortable rate for natural gas, suddenly sanctions are in place, there's a war going on, things change, and all of a sudden your bills are wildly higher. And you weren't prepared for it. You didn't change anything. You just lived your life and your bills changed. So there's a geopolitical component that makes it difficult. And unfortunately, that's very unpredictable. There's no way to know when that will happen. Maybe for the next 10 years, we'll enter an era of unimaginable prosperity and peace around the world. I pray every day that's the case, but we just don't know. And my philosophy, especially for my family and my business, as you guys know, for me, energy pricing and reliable power, not having power outages is crucial because I run Tuba Da Vinci from this location. We are in our office building. This building is on my property. It's the second little house. And if we lose power, the entire company is not operating. Our network, our servers go down. We're not producing videos. We're not editing. And that's something we just cannot afford. So for us, energy is even more critical. But as a lot of you guys are working from home, you might be in the same boat as well. So with geopolitical considerations, China and Taiwan, there's a lot of turmoil or kind of instability, I think. So we hope for the best, but I like the Marine mantra of like prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And there's just no way to know exactly what will happen in the future. The second thing is the effects of climate change and how they're playing out. For example, Alex, ticker symbol U, one of my really good friends, is in Florida. And Florida is flooding currently. And it's not from a hurricane, which you might think, okay, that's kind of a thing that happens. It's just from record rainfall. Typically in April, the state gets around 25 to 30 inches of rain for the month of April. And they got 25 or 30 inches in like a day. And as a result, their drainage systems and stuff can't keep up. And parts of Florida are just flooding. Now, these things, again, are hard to predict. There's no way to know if you're going to have record rainfall or drought. You can't really, there might be some models that could get close, but there's not really any way to know. And so if you are, and see if you can pull up some footage, Juan, if you can. So there's no way to know if you're going to have that. Here in California, we've had a similar thing where we have had record rainfall. We've had 4 months of some of the coldest weather I've ever seen. I truly do not remember in my 35 years in California it ever being this cold for this long, especially in San Diego. It's been a cold and wet winter. The wet part is good. I think our drought is over. And as the snowpack in the Sierra Nevadas will melt, we should have a good long period of weather. But it has been very challenging. And so there's just kind of new changes. Wildfires might not be a problem this year, but they'll probably return here in California. If it's not wildfires, it's hurricanes, a tornado, a cold snap, like what happened in Texas where, really record cold weather, the grid wasn't ready, there were outages and stuff. So there's that component. That's the second component. Then there's the utilities and all the control and what those companies can do. We in California were not ready for record natural gas prices. And in fact, this year, the natural gas prices were on the way down, but we still had increasing rate charges. And part of that is because these companies will buy energy ahead of time. So like you'll buy a natural gas future for this price locked in for this period of time. And if they bought it at a bad time and the prices are going down, it's not going to benefit you. And then when like record demand shows up because of cold weather, that can compound and there's all sorts of challenges that can arise from that. So between those kinds of considerations, was there one I missed one? Was there a fourth thing? I'm trying to remember. Those three things leave you kind of unsure about what the pricing is going to be. Also, and this is a kind of a breaking story, things are kind of in motion, but in California and San Diego in particular, they're planning a new charging model where they're going to have a flat rate based on your income. And this is a clear attack on people with solar panels. The reason why this is frustrating is I told you $1,000 a month. How many of you pay $1,000 a month in natural gas and electricity? Now, if you're thinking, oh, Ricky's a crazy person who uses a ton of power, Not really. We used about 1,100 kilowatt hours a month. And natural gas, yeah, we had the house heater running. We have a natural gas furnace, which we want to get rid of. And now that we have solar, we probably could. But right now we have pretty average uses. I bet you a lot of you guys, depending on where you live, use way more energy. It's just that you're not paying ludicrous amounts of money for it. And so if you're thinking in California, you have to kind of go solar, right? If you don't go solar, you're going to have to pay these ridiculous prices. And California has been expensive for a while, and San Diego leads the way. It is even more expensive than Northern California, PG&E, their utility up there, and it's just been frustrating. So for a lot of people, going solar is almost a necessity because my payoff period is going to be really short, right? You can imagine if I'm saving like $1,200, $1,000 a month-ish, that's $12,000 a year. My $30,000 solar system will be paid off in like 3 years, right? And there's some other base charges and stuff, but let's say 3 to 4 years. That's kind of a no-brainer because then for 27 or 28, 30 years after that, it's just net profit. You're making money producing solar all the way through. But this new bill is kind of aimed to stop people with solar, right? Because this new bill, and based on my income level, I would be paying here in San Diego $127 just to be on the grid. Not based on usage, just to be alive. If I turned off my master breaker, went on vacation for a month, my electricity charges would be over $130 a month for using no energy. And solar production can't offset that, right? This is a bill that they're trying to pass, which would take effect maybe next year, so we have a little bit of time. But there's no way around it. Even if you have solar, if you have any NEM2, or whatever you thought you had, they can change the rules. And this is the part that made me want to make this live stream because it's really infuriating. What can you do? You lived your life, you've done your things, and suddenly they're talking about billing you differently. Now, I am going to rail on SDG&E, but I'll wait for a second. First, their rationale is, well, all these people with solar panels are hurting poorer, low-income families. And the logic is, okay, we have these really high rates. People who have the money to go solar will go solar, and now they're not paying it. But as a result, the rate is high because the poor, lower income family that can't afford solar is having to burden that cost. And rather than making it easier for other people to go solar, which is not in the utility's interest, they're thinking, how about this? We'll lower the rate of electricity for everybody, and then introduce this flat rate. So as a result, the people without solar will pay less, right? Because their bill just went down and their flat rate will be much smaller. So if you're making $30,000 a year, the base charge would be like $27. Not terrible, but still a ton of money in my opinion. And then for people with solar, even though you paid for this big solar system, you're still going to pay whatever it is, like $1,500 a year just to be on the grid. And I honestly think if that goes through in a year's time, I am going to go off grid. And this gets to the battery part, right? If you want to be truly energy independent, the battery is the most important thing. I would argue the battery is probably as important or even more important than solar, because even if you had a power outage and you have batteries fully charged without solar, you could probably last quite a while until the power came back. Of course, the combination of solar and battery is the cream of the crop in terms of what you can do. So I want to also understand that the technologies that I talk about or the things I want to do are super expensive, and I completely understand. If you've watched my videos, you know how long I've been talking about this. So you can imagine how long I've been saving to do some of these things. For example, going solar, we'll start with my electric car. My first electric car we bought in 2020. We've had it for 3 years, my Tesla Model 3. I've been saving and preparing to buy that car for a long time before that. Our current house, I've been saving my whole adult life to be able to buy this, our dream house, if you will, right? With 2 properties where I can run my business right from home, be near my kids, and not miss a beat. Going solar, it took me the entirety of last year to be able to save up enough money to get the new roof and go solar. So my point is, I'm not insensitive to the fact that these things are expensive. But I think my motivation to make this video, and we have links, by the way, to some of the energy sources, like Energy Sage is a new partner of ours that we want to work with. Ways to save on going solar. If you've watched our videos, we have this long-term sponsor called Hoy Miles. And our microinverters are powered by Hoy Miles. And the really cool part about it is they're microinverters, but my 29 solar panels only needed 10 inverters. And the reason why is because each Hoymas has a couple of different products, a 1-to-1 inverter, one panel, one inverter. They have a 2-in-1 and a 4-in-1. And I have a bunch of the 4-in-1s. And if you get a 4-in-1 inverter, you can save about half the price of a traditional microinverter. And in fact, my inverters probably cost a little bit less than a traditional string inverter plus the optimizers. Anyways, nerding out a little bit. We'll get into this more in details, but I saved a ton of money on my inverters with Hoymiles. So we have links to that. Energy Sage is a really good resource. There's you can buy used solar panels, right? My goal in the coming years is to find ways to make all of this stuff cheaper. Now, if you can do DIY and install things yourself and do the permitting yourself, solar is not expensive at all. Honestly, my 29 panels I bought used from a company called Solar Steels, which there's a link to in the description. I paid $5,000 for 29 panels, 410 watt each. They're really awesome. They're commercial grade panels, and $5,000, right? My microinverters similarly priced, half the price of traditional panels. Now, I did pay for installers. I don't have the time or energy or the roofing wherewithal or knowledge, know-how to do it myself. But if you could do that yourself, 11 kilowatt system for around 10 or 15 grand is probably reasonable with the racking and hardware and stuff. That's kind of hard to beat. Now, there's a ton of people who will teach you how to do the DIY solar route. I'm probably not going to do that here on this channel, but I will break down and I'll recommend, and try to provide as many options as possible. So we have some footage, Juan? Throw some video of our solar. And so there's ways you can save, but it is expensive. And the way to think about this is to build toward a future where you're energy independent, right? It's not going to happen overnight. It didn't happen overnight for me. I'm almost 40 years old, and I'm finally realizing a dream I had in college. My dream has always been, I want to have a house with, well, at the time, I didn't really think the electric car was possible because Tesla, 2002 to 2006, when I graduated, it was hard to imagine that the electric car would be so easy. I kind of thought I'd have to build my own or something else, but you can just go buy one now. And there's cheap options used. Chevy Bolt is kind of the economic king. But you can get an electric car, solar panels, and live entirely off grid. And I will tell you that in the 3 weeks since I've had my entire system operational with my span meter, I have been charging my car and living my life entirely on solar power. Now, because I don't have the battery, all that exporting to the grid is not really net zero, right? Because somebody else has to use it, but then I use other energy later. It's not solar powered. So I have a ways to go, but the point is I have been charging my car for free. So those break-even calculators are even better if you don't need natural gas, if you don't need an internal combustion car. So, but of course, buying an EV is not cheap. I understand that. But if you need to buy one eventually, there's ways you can go about it. So, I remember one more thing in the news that I've been hearing recently that I wanted to touch on that will change how energy is being built. And that is Germany recently announced that they are shutting down their final 3 remaining nuclear power plants. And this kind of falls into the geopolitical category, but this is really important. And the reason why is we're entering a transitional period, and it's going to be painful. Transitions are usually painful, right? If you're a Windows user and then you turn to Mac, for a while it'll be painful, right? There's new ways to learn how to do things. In the case of the energy transition, the reason why it'll be painful is because we're going to have to figure out what to do in the interim. Natural gas power plants have been around. Nuclear power plants have been around. But the difference is nuclear power has become a weird, it's still valuable. There's a place for it, but I project that no one is going to build them anymore. And the reason is the regulations are so strong and it is so difficult and expensive to build a nuclear power plant that people aren't going to do it. And that didn't matter in the past when they were built. A commissioned running nuclear power plant is really economic. You just keep running it, produce power. But what's happening around the world is they're aging out. If you look at Japan, Japan, France, and Germany are some leading countries in terms of nuclear power. Japan is actually turning some of their power plants back on, their nuclear power plants, but Germany's phasing them out. And the reason is they're old. A lot of the heyday, the glory age was the 70s, 80s when France and Japan, for example, were entirely nuclear powered, and it was great. But they're old now. So now we're entering a point where it's kind of like the analogy I would use is if you have a car, you have an old car, kind of a beater you've had forever, and it's been great for you. It's paid off and it works. But then There's that horrible moment when you have a catastrophic failure, the engine blows up, the transmission dies, something like that. You take to a mechanic and he tells you, I'm so sorry, but it'll cost $5,000 to replace. And then you're forced to make a decision. You can either pay $5,000 to get the engine rebuilt, transmission, all those things to get this car running again, but you know that car is not even worth $5,000. So if I did that, sure, potentially it might work, but also maybe next year the HVAC system goes out and then the bearings in the wheels and other components start to fail one after the other. So then you would think, why did I just spend $5,000 on this old car that's not even worth $5,000, and now I have another bill for $1,000, right? That's how countries feel about nuclear today. The cracks and some of the, the encasement and containment devices have a certain age, right? There's cracks start to form. You have to do inspections, NDIs, non-destructive investigations. And some of these things need to start to be addressed. But now when you do those changes, you have to meet and comply with the regulations and laws of today. And these laws are incredibly stringent because, as you can imagine, if nuclear power goes wrong, it goes really wrong. And you got to credit the engineers and the technicians and people who run nuclear power plants that we'd never hear about any of these kinds of problems. Even Fukushima, no one really died from it. I mean, sure, they have huge silos of radioactive water that they can't really just do anything with. They have to just kind of hold them for thousands of years, but no one directly died from some of those things. So, but there is an inherent danger in nuclear power, and as a result, the regulations make it very difficult. So for a lot of countries around the world, they're facing that analogy, the broken car that's old and worth very little. What do you do? So Germany used to have these nuclear power plants, and their energy prices and everything else was a function of that. If they're phasing them down, Germany is kind of a leader in terms of wind and solar, which is great. But do they have enough battery storage for the night? Can they handle that? It's hard to tell. What are they going to do? Are they going to go natural gas peaker power plants or like other base load systems? And when they do that, your bills, again, might fluctuate dramatically. Because as we transition, there's going to be a day when batteries, all the megapacks Tesla's working on, other companies, flow batteries, we've done videos on some of this technology. There's going to be a day when this is really easy, but that day is not today. Today is going to be a transitional period. And there's going to be kind of a learning pain, right? And so that will affect your prices as well. And there sometimes might not be any warning. It's hard to predict. Germany right now is decommissioning nuclear power plants, and then 2024 summer, there's a record heat wave. And suddenly they're going to start rolling out brownouts potentially, or raising the rate so high as to kind of force you not to run the air conditioning because you don't want to pay that bill. There's going to be these kinds of realizations. So in my mind, for some of those factors, now is the most important time ever to really consider going solar. And I say consider going solar, not like go solar today, because again, I've always been a believer that you have to plan and pay for this stuff financially responsibly. I've always done that. I don't take loans. I don't really like debt. I like to just save, put a plan together, start saving toward it. When you have enough money saved, go pull the trigger. So maybe you don't buy solar for 2 more years or 1 year or 6 months. It doesn't really matter. But I want to put it I want to put it in front of you to think about. And for me, it comes down to being prepared. I want to be prepared if the power goes out. Let's say there's for example, in California, we had the really bad rain and there were mudslides and stuff. So as a result, there were areas that were without power for periods of time. If you have a telephone pole that falls by the roadside due to a mudslide from heavy rain, you're not going to have power. And you might not have power for 2 days. So in my mind, it's almost like a savings account. Like, they always try to save for a rainy day. Ironic that's the expression. But could you last 2 days without power, right? So maybe like the portable power stations, I'm reviewing increasingly more portable power stations. EcoFlow, Renogy, Dabson's a new one I'm trying out. These are great because they're really cost effective, and you just leave them charged up. The power goes out, roll this out, plug your fridge in, keep your fridge running, roll one out to your wireless modem and router, and you can keep working off of a battery possibly, and it's not so bad, right? What? The UPSs? No good? Should I mention that? So here's one, for example, from a company called EcoFlow. This battery we keep charged and ready to go if something were to go wrong. Now for us, we're planning on being entirely battery powered by the house. But if you're not, you could pick up a portable power station like this. It has solar input, so you can put some solar panels on a patio, keep them charged that way too, and potentially go 2 days, not have spoiled food, not be rushing to, figure out what to do, and actually live a decent little life for 2 days. Now, the level of luxury gets harder and more expensive, right? You're not charging your car. You're not running air conditioning off of small batteries. You need a bigger system, right? My plan is to have a pretty big system. We'll talk more about that later. But you can start as small as that. Also, the really cool thing about these portable power stations is they have solar input. So even if you don't want to go solar and get the permitting and do it all formally, if you have a patio or a little bit of a plot of land, you could roll out solar panels and keep these things charged up and theoretically kind of infinitely power certain things. So start there. That's cheap, right? For me, I don't, I mean, there are commissions and things from some of these like Energy Sage platforms, but I'm not worried about that. I'm just trying to give you guys options for things that you can do. The portable power station is one of the fastest growing segments. The amount of companies that reach out to me to mess around with their new portable power station is incredible. I get emails almost every day, and I'm happy to hear it because I think people are starting to realize, whether I'm going camping, going outside, going to a park, or being prepared for emergencies, a portable power station is an amazing thing. And of course, I personally think the long-term bigger strategy would be a permitted on-roof, solar system, but those are expensive. But think about going solar now, because if you do, you'll be prepared for that eventuality. And, I hope that the power outages and things are not so bad. But again, think of today as a transitional period. If more people are getting electric vehicles, your DC fast charging pulling 250 kilowatts from the grid. And as that rolls out more, are we keeping pace? It's hard to build supply and demand perfectly. That's not normal. Typically, it's kind of make the iPhone, and you can't make them fast enough because the demand is this high and the supply is that high, right? And then eventually you ramp up the supply and the demand falls and you have too many. It's hard to make them line up, is the bottom line. So the best way to be protected and safe with your family is to have a backup plan. I think now going solar and getting a home battery, it used to be a luxury or a way that people who had high energy bills could kind of combat that and save money. But increasingly with all that's happening around the world, I think going solar and having a battery for your home is kind of self-reliance and assurance and emergency preparedness. And knowing that you could continue to run your family and your life even if the power goes out. Now, all these factors are compounded if like the weather's really cold and you don't have a way to heat your house. Even a little space heater in one room, if your whole family just crowded into the master bedroom and you had a space heater running on 1,000 watts or something to keep your family warm, that goes a long way, right? And with weather, or how about like medical issues? If you need some sort of a medical device for your personal health, could you go 2 days without having power? Probably not. But incredibly, some of these little battery and solar options can make that a reality. So there's probably 8 things I covered that I want to cover in depth in like in-depth videos in the future. But what I really wanted to kind of talk about is this feeling that I have where I'm increasingly unhappy with my utility company. But they're a monopoly here in California. I can't really change it. Now there are some community energy plans and stuff. You have a quote. You have a comment one. I think we have a comment. Let's see if I can read that. I can't really read that in this view. Can you turn off studio mode so I can see it full screen? There we are. All right. So Read One Boy says, Ricky, explain this new fee based on income. This is for everyone, not just new solar users. Excellent question. So people say so goes California, so will the U.S. eventually follow. When it comes to emissions and car models, everyone makes cars that are California compliant, because if you make it California compliant, it'll be all 50 state compliant. This is an example of how California leads the way the wrong way. So great question. This fee affects everybody. So the plan currently would be Edison, which is in like Southern California, SDG&E here specifically in San Diego, and PG&E in Northern California are all teaming up. It's kind of the evil galactic empire, if you will. They're all teaming up to build this new flat fee based on income. And these companies, they're wording, they're doing this to help low-income families. They're the good guys in this story, right? And what they're saying is, yeah, in your bill, think of it as 2 parts. One will be usage-based, and one is income-based. So they have different tiers, and if you make, let's be honest, if you have a home in California, you're going to be on the top end of this tier, right? Homes where I live on average are 1.3 to 1.8 million dollars. There's no way you're buying a house like that if you don't make enough money to hit that limit. And they know what they're doing. They've made these caps, where most people will fall into that big bucket. But yeah, your bill will be two parts. One will be usage based. So now your electricity bill is a little bit smaller per kilowatt hour, but then you have this flat rate and there's nothing you can do to get around it. You can't offset it by, I exported so much solar that, no, that does not complete. They're two different parts. They're two buckets and there's no way you can get around it. And like I mentioned, to put it into context, SDG&E is the worst of all of them. And for them, the lowest tier would be like $27. So if you were lower income or the lowest income, your flat rate would be, you'd have a plus $27 charge. But the odds are that your usage charge would lower more than $27. And so if you were the lowest income Californians, you would save on energy. Your net bill would be smaller, right? Let's say you had a $180 bill. Now it would be, let's say it was 90 plus the 27 is 120. So you're saving $60. But the motivation, you can tell by how they structured this deal, the motivation is simply, we got to screw the people that are screwing us by going solar and not using our energy, right? Because there's no way to get around it. Typically, I would always say, oh, okay, well, NEM3, which is kind of plans to do the same thing, isn't that not enough? Because what they're doing is they're not giving you any credit for excess production. So if you're making 8 kilowatts and only using 2 and you're exporting 6, they're not going to pay you next to anything for that. Isn't that good enough? Because you're getting free energy that you can sell to other people and make money. No, that's not enough for them. Now they got to do this. Now, the answer has always been go batteries and produce and use your own energy on site. But this flat rate would still screw you. And I'm telling you right now, if that happens, if that passes, I am going to disconnect the grid. And I'm going off grid. I'm tired of SDG&E, and I'm going to literally make YouTube video after YouTube video recommending to other people how you can do the same thing. This channel will become kind of an avenue. How much it'll cost? I'll put all those things together. I've already mentioned new roof, 30,000, solar, 30,000, right? You can probably save some money there. The battery system is probably going to be around 30,000 as well. So now we're at 90,000 for the new roof doesn't really count because you need a new roof regardless to stay dry and to keep your house safe, right? But 60 grand, and then maybe 60, I paid another 60 grand for for a battery EV. So that's 120 grand. I do have a loan on the car. The other stuff I paid for myself. So look, like I mentioned, it's not cheap, but I'm planning to keep those cars for a decade plus. I'm planning to live in my house forever. I want my kids to come back from college and visit us here. That's kind of what we're building here. So it kind of depends on, one thing I will say is you need to figure out if you're going to stay in your house long term before making these moves. I personally think this whole net zero thing where eventually I'm getting rid of my natural gas clothes dryer, my natural gas water heater, and my furnace. Those are the big 3. I'm going to get rid of the clothes dryer with a heat pump clothes dryer and the water heater with a heat pump water heater. I shouldn't have flipped off the camera. Apologies. I'm going to do that like now in the next 4 or 5 months. The furnace, I got to figure out because that's going to be a ton of energy usage. And I need to make sure that I can keep my family warm at night on the shortest days where the sun's not out very much. And I got some data to figure out, but eventually I'm going to get rid of all 3 of those things. But to do those things, you're not going to really get that money back. No one's going to buy your house because you have a heat pump water heater. That money is not going to translate into money when you sell the house, especially when people don't really know what that is or the benefit of it, right? Maybe one day they will. Maybe in Europe people know. But odds are that's not going to help you here unless you're staying long term. So think of this as like building a bulletproof life, like building a life of control. I'm a bit of a control freak for people who know me. And I hate the idea that I have to be reliant on a gasoline powered car and whatever's happening in the world and oil shortages and fluctuating prices. I hate to have to rely on a company to provide me electricity. I have a roof. I think I can do it myself. So if you kind of have that feeling, think of this as a journey of many, many steps. The first step is to, buy your own home. There's really no way to go net zero if you're a renter. There are some cool tech, like you can get the portable power battery and a solar system and kind of go partially off grid potentially, but there's HOA considerations and stuff. So that might not be that easy. So step 1, I've always said, buy your own home. We have a new comment from Mario. He says, just don't pay your bill. They will shut off you and put you off grid naturally. Damn. I don't know if they'll put me in collections or if it'll hurt my credit score. But if I make that joke because in some parts of in the country, in the world, it's illegal to go off grid. That to me makes me more furious than anything. So first of all, you can charge me whatever you want, whenever you want, change the rules, and then I can't even say goodbye and leave you as a customer. Could you imagine a gym membership where, nope, sorry, you're forever beholden to be here and you can't quit? Timeshares sound like that. Timeshares are a terrible idea. Public service announcement, never get a timeshare. They're a horrible, horrible thing. I've heard of countless horror stories where you're basically passing on this horrible thing to your children and they can't get out of it. Anyway, that's kind of what your grid power utility company is, a thing you can't get rid of. And in that case, I will take crazy action. I will try to go off grid. And if I can't do that, I will sue and put together like a, what do you call it? Like I'll put together a group of people and do like a class action lawsuit against the utility company if I'm not able to. But I'm not messing around here. I've just been covering this stuff for long enough, and SDG and these companies are increasingly going the wrong direction, and I'm not going to just sit back for sure. It's time that we kind of hold them to account, and we understand that we have the power. Before solar panels, how are you going to produce your own energy in any meaningful way? Right now, a couple of days, getting a contract with a company to come install solar, my big system was around 30 grand. For 30 grand, you have a power station on your roof that can produce 1,500 kilowatt hours of energy a month here in California. Now, if you live in the East Coast or other places where you have snow or the weather is, not as formidable and not so easy to deal with, there's other things you can do. For example, the battery that I'm going with is called Franklin. Franklin is the company. They're this new startup. They're a newer company, but they're doing some big things. I've been tracking them for a while. I've been doing research for a while. Tesla's Powerwall still is a fantastic option. I'm actually installing a Powerwall at my mom and dad's house. They live on a farm in the middle of Central Valley, California, where if their power goes out, their water pump, because they're on a well, that won't run, and they don't have water. Talk about quickly realizing how much you need energy independence. Was there a super chat one? Yeah, throw it up there. Really, really appreciate the super chats. This one's from Edwin Hernandez. Really appreciate you. He says, "You're a good man, Rick." I appreciate you, Edwin, and you're a good man for the super chat. Really appreciate your support. This started as a small journey for me, but I've quickly realized talking to people, my friends, viewers, people on Twitter. I'm trying to get more active on Twitter. I email, mailing list messages. I have heard from all of you, and I know what I have to do. I got to figure this out, and it has to be cost effective. And if things are not cost effective, I'll let you know which things aren't. But thank you so much. I appreciate that. So I'm going with a company called Franklin, and Tesla Powerwall for my mom and dad, because I've been waiting. It's been over a year I've been waiting for Tesla. That's part of the frustration I have with them, is the unknown of when their parts or their products will be available, service and stuff. Those are a little bit of a challenge, but they'll have a Powerwall and they should be good. The power goes out for a day, they would still have water power around their house. They're old school. They're very frugal. They don't really use much power. One single Powerwall would be probably enough until their solar comes back online the next day. But for me, the cool thing about the Franklin product is it's kind of a modular system. There's a thing called the A gate. That's kind of the brains of the unit. You just need one of those. Then there's, I think they call them A power, is their battery systems. And you can have one, and you can add another, add a third, and then the output goes, 5 kilowatts per battery. My goal is to get 3 batteries, which would be 15 kilowatt output, which means with my span panel controlling everything, I could make no compromises and run my entire house, run my air conditioner, charge my cars, run everything in the office, all my stuff, and have no problems. I could have an entirely off-grid life. So that's my goal. I got to be able to do that. But what's really cool with Franklin is they also have a module you can add on that's generator. So think of this as like deep, deep backup. Let's say we had a month of nonstop cloudy days or something crazy happened and we couldn't charge our batteries enough with solar. And again, I mentioned our family lives here and our office and our building and our company lives here. Then they'd have a generator that I could, as a last ditch effort, turn on and produce some power, maybe propane based or something, and hope to never need it, but be prepared. And with that, I'd be comfortable going off grid. Because as an engineer, I always prepare for the worst. Some people think engineers are kind of, kind of downers because we're always thinking about when it fails, right? A lot of people get excited about when something goes right, but engineers were literally built to think when everything goes wrong. So as a result, when everything goes wrong, let's say I don't know, there's a volcano eruption and we're covered in ash for a month or something crazy, that I could still, get propane. I don't know if propane would be difficult to get, but between that and solar, I think I could go totally off grid, and that's my goal. Thank you for the super chat, Chris Karan. He says, it's always best to reduce what power you need before increasing power generation. Consider retrofitting your home to be super efficient. Thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate you. So, interestingly, and this sucks, I hate that the incentives are this way, but in California, adding a big solar system for 30 grand is actually way cheaper than adding insulation, because our labor prices in California are ludicrously high. And if I wanted to have all my drywall ripped out, have all my walls insulated better, thicker, and put the drywall back, that would cost more than 30 grand. And with solar, with producing 60 kilowatt hours of solar, I could just run the heater a little bit more. But I'm 100% with you that that's super wasteful. And I hate that the structures are like that. Getting solar is cheaper than adding insulation. That's so backward, but unfortunately it is the case. I have a video on this solid phase change building insulation from a company called Q Platinum. And I am actually going to go hardcore on the insulation as well. But the problem is it's really disruptive to my life too. We live here, right? So where am I going to go while all the drywall's ripped out? And that's going to cost, I don't even want to think about it, but I'm thinking when I do that, I'm going to also install a gray water system. So all the water from the showers and the sink will all go into some sort of reservoir, and we'll use that to water the lawn. So water is the other part of the equation we haven't forgotten about. We're definitely going to do. We also are planning to build a vertical farm greenhouse with LED grow lighting and stuff that we can grow spinach and other leafy greens, hardier things that we can live off of. We're going to get some chickens. We're going to go all out. This is going to be kind of a case study. I want to be, somebody can call me up and have a full idea of what it would take to kind of be fully self-reliant. In some ways, it's really new school and hip and trendy and technology based. And in some ways, it's kind of a old school thing, right? Growing your own plants and stuff. So I have a lot to learn. I'm by no means an expert, but I'd love to share all that with you guys and take your feedback and input. We'll definitely throw up the chats here and take your questions at this point. But yeah, with the battery supply, I'm thinking I need 40 kilowatt hours of storage. And if my solar is producing 60 and I can bank 40, so I can use 20 during the day when whatever's happening, and then I can charge my batteries overnight. I got to basically survive from 6 p.m. when the sun starts going down all the way till 7, so about 13 hours of storage. And if I were using 2 kilowatts, continuously, which would be 2 kilowatt hours an hour over times about 24 kilowatt hours, I'd be fine. Plus a little bit of a bank for cloudy days, other things, right? So if I can do a 40 kilowatt system, 40 kilowatt hour battery system as well with a span smart meter, which again, video coming soon, that thing is freaking amazingly cool what it can do. It allows you to not have to make any choices or sacrifices on like a critical loads panel where only these small things work and these things don't work if the power goes out. I don't have to make those calls because the span can smart time, load shed, turn off things that are huge, and I can classify things as like must have, would be nice to have, and unnecessary. So my pool pump, for example, I could make it as unnecessary. So if the power goes out and my batteries are discharging, stop running the pool pump. The pool will be fine if it doesn't circulate for a day or two. It's not the end of the world. But my server and all the computers running in the office, I need those. Like those are very critical. So span makes that kind of easy. And I have a video that I'm really excited about making shortly that will cover that. But with a span, 11 kilowatts of solar, and 40 kilowatt hours of batteries. And that's a rough calculation based on what I've been looking at, my home usage. I think I'll be there. And man, yeah, I kind of feel stressed thinking about going off grid because then the pressure is on you to have thought of everything. I don't know if you guys have ever heard the story of there was like a famous architect who designed a library in New York. but forgot to account for the weight of the books. So when the books all moved in, the building was having a catastrophic failure because he didn't account for the weight of the books. I kind of feel that way. Again, as an engineer, I'm always second doubting and kind of second guessing myself. And I'm thinking, have I thought of everything? What happens if it's so cloudy? What if it's raining nonstop? What can I survive? Can I really go off grid? But based on what I've been seeing so far, with a little bit of a compromise, right, being a little bit smart, I think I can. We're also doing a Mr. Cool DIY heat pump, heater, and air conditioner in the office. Currently, we have nothing in the office, and it was a cold winter, so we were running like, space heaters, which are not very efficient. Well, they're 100% efficient, but they're not very effective. We could do much better. So a lot of our commenters and viewers, emails, we got so many messages about Mr. Cool that we're doing that. That's going to be happening this week, maybe this week, next week. We got to do that. So we're going to try to cover all these technologies and things that we can do to get there together. And you got to remember too, I'm going all the way and totally gung ho. You could just take small steps, right? You could go as little as a portable power station and a couple of solar panels on your patio, and just run your laptop and your internet stuff and one fridge, and lower your burden on the grid, save a little bit of money. You can start small, or you can go all the way. But do what's right for you. Don't feel the pressure to spend more money than you have or you're comfortable with. Don't ever do that. That's my first advice. Is solar salespeople have come and gone into my door, increasingly less, because I will never make a decision with you here. I sleep on things for a week or two, a month. I think of every use case or scenario, account for all the things, and I do things in a very methodical way. It's kind of the engineer in me, and I recommend everyone be the same. Like don't feel pressured to go and do anything. Especially the one thing I was pressuring some of my friends to go solar was to beat that NEM3 deadline. If you're not familiar, let me know if you want me to expand on NEM3 here in California. But basically, they've screwed people who export excess solar and make it so you really have to get a battery. Otherwise, it's not really that worth it. But now that deadline has come and gone, I'm back to no pressure. Like don't do anything you're not comfortable with. Take tiny steps and build slowly. This is a journey, and it might take you a decade. But how fun will it be to look back and reflect? Oh, I remember when I got solar. I remember when I got that new heat pump water heater. I got the heat pump geothermal AC, right? I might do that, thinking about it. So it's a journey of 1,000 miles, and it begins with a single step. And I'm urging all of you guys to start that journey today. Doesn't involve any money yet, right? Just think about how you can survive for a week or two if the power went out, and keep your family safe and never be caught unprepared. So, if whatever your situation is, we'll start doing these shows and taking more input from the audience. Is there any questions you want to throw up on? We'll start taking more feedback from the audience and we'll do kind of like a, who am I thinking of? Those like phone call shows where people call in and go, hi, my situation is this. I have this much debt. What should I do? And they give advice about what people should do. I'll do that. We can have people join the live stream, kind of talk about where they are, how much they're paying, what they think that we should, have them focus on or start with. And we'll start doing kind of like energy consulting or something. It'll be fun. It'll be a fun way for us to reach out to all of you, because as I end this live stream, I want to tell all of you guys, I appreciate all of you. We get to do this because of you. And this dream is a team dream, because without all of you guys, this ain't happening. So I want to bring as much value to you as possible here. So there's a question from John. He says, what is the roof's U factor or continuous insulation R value? What is my roof's U factor? Okay. So my roof is it's a darker shingle, which is not good. Darker colors absorb more light. There's less light reflected back. That's why they appear darker, which isn't good. But for me, I'm also really into the look of things. I don't want some white roof. I wanted the darker roof because I'm going to paint my house a kind of a alabaster white, and I want that contrast with the roof. Now, that being said, it is a cool roof. I think it's called the Owens Cool Roof is the product. And it's a cool roof because it has special granules, that's kind of the sand bits in there, that are highly reflective. And so they reflect light back, and as a result, it's better than an average shingle roof. But it is a shingle roof. Then I have my roofing wood, right? The wood that goes underneath it. Well, there's the water paper, there's the stuff that keeps the water out, the rain out, then the wood, and I have nothing else from the roof joist down into the attic. And then in my attics, I have a little bit of blown in some places, and in some places I have vaulted ceilings where I have nothing in there. I don't think because my master bedroom, for example, has a vaulted ceiling, and it gets hot there. It gets hot even on a medium hot day. So I think I got a lot of drywall to rip out. So to answer your question, it's not very good. My home was built in the 60s or 70s, and there's been some renovations over the years. Like they've upgraded the electrical, which is cool, but the insulation is piss poor. And the only reason why it's able to be piss poor is because in San Diego you can get away with it. If my house was in where Matt Farrell lives in Massachusetts, you would be dead because your heating and cooling, especially your heater could not keep up with how much heat my house is losing. It wouldn't be able to keep up, and you would freeze to death. Literally, not to be dramatic, but here in California, it's a mild inconvenience and a little bit more on your energy bill. But in places where you have proper weather, where where it's -20 outside and stuff, this house would not cut it. That's the crappy part about California is because our weather is so mild, people get away with this stuff. Like they don't put as much insulation. As that earlier comment that I think it was Edwin mentioned, you should always try to tighten up the envelope, minimize how much heat you're losing or cool your cool is being introduced. That way you can use less energy. But in California, as these energy prices continue to rise, it will be increasingly worth it. But for me, I have a lot of things I want to do. The gray water capture. So when I rip all the drywall out, maybe we'll move the family. I don't know. We'll have to move them somewhere in some small room, rip out all the drywall, really modernize everything, make sure the electrical's up to code, up to snuff. Gray water capture system where the gray water is separated from the black water, the toilets and stuff, and the sink in the kitchen all just go right to the sewer like they do now. Capture the gray water, insulate everything really nicely, and then finally put the drywall back up. As you can imagine, that's going to be really expensive. Just re-drywalling, I would imagine, is going to cost 20 grand in my house. So it's going to be painful, but I am going to do it. I'm not sure if we'll get to it this year because we have a lot of appliances to upgrade. So this year it might just be solar, battery, heat pump, all the things, get rid of all the natural gas stuff. And maybe next year, because I got to spread the money around, right? I got to make these projects. I got to be able to pay for them. So I might do the hardcore insulation behind the drywall stuff next year. What else do we have? How many? So if my wife was on, I don't know if she is, she would be commenting for all of you guys to hit that like button. That's a huge value add for all of us to keep these videos being spread out. We have 300 viewers, which is pretty awesome. Really feel like we're picking up some steam there. And what I would also like to just hear from all of you guys. Yeah, I feel, especially in the last year or two, going solar for me, it was always as an engineer, I just think it's fascinating to produce my own energy. I just think it's cool. It was never about money for me. I appreciate saving money on my bills, but I've always just been curious, right? That was why I went solar 12 years ago, my first house. We made videos about that. But now it's becoming a control thing. I don't like having so much of my life in other people's hands. And when it comes to energy, gasoline for your car, that's kind of the case. And this is how we as consumers, as the little guy, fight back. Any comments, Juan? So here's one from Dan. Appreciate you, Dan. He says, do you think what is going on in California could happen in Canada? So I will say Canada is very progressive. Canada leads the way in a ton of stuff. Some of the coolest companies I talk to are based in Toronto or like Montreal, Vancouver, especially Toronto. For whatever reason, there's just a ton of really cool stuff happening. Mitrex comes to mind, the company that is building, remember that company, Juan? It's a company that builds solar panels that look like whatever you want. So instead of having a traditional building facade siding, you could have it look like wood or marble or glass or whatever, but it's actually a solar panel behind producing power. It's such a cool company. They were in Toronto. There's a ton of really cool stuff happening there. To answer your question, absolutely, I do think that's possible. A lot of these things in the world are about precedence, and that's something that lawyers always say is establishing precedence, right? It's hard to say something is legal or not legal or this should be done until someone does it. Then once someone has done it and there's been a precedence for it, it's easy to spread. That's the unfortunate thing here. So if California does this, and then all the Canada companies will be like, oh, we should do the same thing, because of low income families. We need to support them. We need to protect them. So unfortunately, Canada is, it could happen, definitely. And we all need to fight back here in California first. Philip says, can't you have insulation blown in without removing the drywall? Yes. So the your house is, walls and roof, right? The roof and the roof, the ceiling insulation is very important. That I could have blown in, and that's pretty cheap. I could probably have that done for a couple $1,000s, I'd imagine, or just go buy a bunch of bats of it and roll it out and stuff. And it's just uncomfortable being up in an attic, but totally doable. The vaulted ceiling is not possible. There's no attic crawl space. It's just joist, and then in between them there's insulation or no insulation. So that would require removing drywall. But anywhere where you have an attic, there's like a little, unconditioned space above, blowing in insulation is always a good idea. Absolutely. So that would help you there, but not on the sides of your house. So heat is coming and going from the floor, the walls, and the roof. So you can put as much insulation as you want, but if your walls aren't well insulated, you'll see no impact because the heat will just transfer through the walls instead. So it helps, but it's not by any means the end all be all. I saw Bong in the comment section. How's he doing? Bong is one of our good friends. He lives very close to me. We need to hang out soon, Bong. What's his comment? Bong says, the engineer in me is what challenged me to get my ROI on my solar system to 2 to 4 years. So yeah, what Bong's talking about is he has a solar system and a Tesla Powerwall. And here in California, there's a plan where the companies can ask homeowners of batteries for excess production, excess power at really high demand times. Because otherwise, you'd have to go turn on a peaker power plant, let's say, for example, at 7 p.m. when people are coming home and watching a football game or something. And rather than doing that, they could just give you money to get a kilowatt hour or 2 or 5 from your battery, and then just for an hour or 2, right? So that is one of the things. What I wish the utility companies in California would realize is stop being stupid, stop being greedy and just stupid, and instead be smart. They're distributors. They don't produce energy. They buy energy from one place and sell it to another. Be smarter and establish a system where you can incentivize people like Bong or myself when I have batteries pretty soon to do the right thing. I don't need your energy right now. Don't export it. Okay, I'll charge my battery in my car and my home. Don't need it. 7 o'clock rolls around, shoot, we're projecting a huge shortage. Everyone's coming home and turning on their air conditioning. It's a hot day. Hey, we need energy. And everybody who's, has smart homes with microgrid kind of tech, they could sell energy back to SDG&E, who then they could go and sell to other customers, right? Make money and then give a little bit of a cut to you. That is called being smart. That's capitalistic instead of being monopolistic, which is what they do. They know that they have you by the cojones, right? They have you. What are you going to do? Go to another company? I can't. There's the community stuff, which I need to figure out. But the problem there is there's still a distribution. Okay, does that, David? David says there are companies that inject insulation into walls without removing the drywall. Interesting. Yeah, it still sounds expensive because you're going bay by bay, so you're doing it every 16 inches, every single between the studs. So I can look into that. That's interesting. But I also don't want to do that because I want to install that QE Platinum phase change material, which if you look at our channel, you'll find there's a video that we did on a phase changing insulation that basically melts and freezes every day to keep inside really comfortable. So we're going to do a more holistic thing. And again, I mentioned the gray water, but I'm glad you mentioned that. That's really good to know. So anybody has insulation that they need to do in the walls, there might be easier ways than I'm thinking. Varick says, ever think about a geothermal heat pump, or is that even an option in your area? Fantastic question. It is an option. It is not popular at all. Again, because our weather is so agreeable, right? So Matt Farrell from Undecided, in his new home that he's having built as we speak, he is getting a heat pump, a geothermal heat pump system from a company called Water Furnace. And I've chatted with Water Furnace and I've thought about it. We'll see. But for him, it's a huge win, right? When it's really cold outside, a typical air heat exchanger heat pump might have to dethaw or, might have to go through other processes. But if you dig down 20 feet underground, that temperature there is probably 55 degrees Fahrenheit, and you can extract the heat from that. So for Matt, it'll be a home run, geothermal heat pumps. For me, it'll be harder to justify for two reasons. California is wildly expensive. So the labor rate to dig that hole, to trench, to install this stuff will be higher than anybody else's. And our payback period will be longer because if you live in Phoenix or Florida and your air conditioner is running 24 hours a day, that's not the case where I live. The evenings are always cool. Even in the heart of summertime, if at most, like the worst of days, the AC might run for 5 hours. That's it. So you can imagine how long the recoup period would be. But I might do it just for the science of it. I have an area in my house allocated for it, and I might do it. Mario, again, appreciate the super chat, buddy. I appreciate you. Is that a second one? That is really, I think that's Mario's second. Really appreciate you. Thanks for that. He says, please have more of this off-grid energy videos. Thanks. I'm setting up a small DIY solar ground mount and carport to go with my Lightning in Tahoe. I grew up in Lake Tahoe, Mario. I got to come visit you, dude. From 5 to 15, when I was age 5 to 15, I grew up in South Lake Tahoe, one of the most picturesque, iconic childhoods you can imagine. And it sounds like he got a Lightning. Oh, that'd be great in the snow. That sounds really, really cool. If you don't have anything, if you have no other, means to do anything else, and you have an electric car and you have land, build a carport, put solar panels on top. That's actually pretty cheap and ingenious, because then you're not losing any ground space. You're keeping your car or your truck cool, right? Covered, keep the paint in good shape. A car that lives in a garage, the paint will never go bad. 50 years from now, it'll be fine. You leave your car outside, 10 years later, 8 years later, the clear coat will start fading really, really quick. So I'm a fan of that idea. I love it. I like the Lightning. Mario, let me know what trim you got. Love that truck. Richard Gould says, oh, Richard, thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate you. Richard says, this is to show my appreciation. You don't need to appreciate me. Well, I do. Well, too late, Richard, because I appreciate you. And I can't take that back. That is forever on the internet. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate it. I'm really curious, Richard, what part speaks to you? What are you thinking? Where are you at on this journey? But as I see more comments from more of you, I'll know. I try to remember a lot of you guys. I know a lot of our common viewers. I see Dusty in there somewhere, but really appreciate you, man. John says, how deep do you have to dig for geothermal energy or heat? Excellent question. It kind of depends on where you live and what kind of technology you go with. So there's a company I've been chatting with. Nothing's really moved because I was so focused on the roof that I didn't really, I'm not a good multitasker. I'm a laser beam. I just do one thing all the time. It makes it hard to, exercise and other things. I got to find a good balance. But I've been so focused on solar because for me, going solar is the starting point. I would never in a million years change out to a geothermal heat pump system from natural gas until I had solar, because electricity prices here would kill me, right? They would be even worse than natural gas. But now that I have solar and I have my own energy coming in, different ballgame, totally different ballgame. So I haven't thought about it very much, but there are two ways you can do this. One is ground-based. So you have big, coils that are moving a fluid through the ground. So for those, I've heard 20 feet. I think 20 feet is about average. I'm not sure if, Juan, you're pulling that up. No? I'll do a video on this later. But there's another way you can do it, which is like a water-based geothermal. So imagine you dig 10 feet or so, and you bury a massive couple 100-gallon water tank, and then you do the heat exchange to water. Water is a really, really good conductor. And as a result, you could, it's a smaller system. You don't have to have quite as massive of a trenching that has to happen. So from what I've gathered, there might be limits to, the water will heat or cool, right? Depending on how big the reservoir is and how much you need. So you'd have to basically size the tank to how big your house is or how much you would pull from it. But that might be the cheaper way to go. And from all my conversations so far, that appears to be the case. But I'll investigate further on that. Since the geothermal, sadly, I wish what I've learned from talking to you guys is we have a bit of an echo chamber where you guys are all so like-minded. So I might talk to you and think, oh, everybody's so hip. They're talking about geothermal. It's not the case. outside in the real world, outside of our, nerdy audience of energy enthusiasts, these things are, nobody knows what a geothermal heat pump is, ground source heat pumps and stuff, sadly. And that's why I make these videos, because I want it to be better known. And I want people to know that they have more options than they think. Here's a comment from Carlos. Carlos, how's it going? He says, what are your thoughts on earth homes and earth shelters, or having a home that has components on them, that has components of earth homes? They have been around for a while and are very, seems to be the way to go. So like an earth ship would be amazing. That would have been a dream of mine. But of course, that doesn't work if you're buying a house that's already been built. The challenge in California is California. We have so many people, and people are always moving in here, and there's a huge housing shortage. So most people will be buying older homes. So unless you're going to rip it down and build an earth ship, which is, again, California's building prices are ludicrous. It's never going to happen. You got to make do with the retrofit, and that's my situation. But if you're buying a house in an area that is much cheaper, where you can buy a plot of land and do like an earthship build, where an earthship is basically kind of using the ground as the dwelling, so you can share. It's almost like a geothermal system, right? You're kind of digging into a countryside, or half the home is buried. You build with like recycled materials, a lot of like old rubber and things, and it's much more holistic approach to a home, where you can use facets of the ground for temperature control and regulation and stuff. I think they're wildly awesome. There are systems where it rains and it gets captured, it goes into a pond, you can grow fish, you can, eat make your own food, or calories. There's all kinds of really cool integrations that are amazing, but I have not looked into them nearly enough. But I'll tell you this, anybody who has built or lives in an earth ship, let me know. I will, and if you're game, I'll fly out there. We'll make an episode, and you can highlight and showcase your house. That's something I want to do for some of you guys, because I bet you a lot of you are even further along on this journey than I am. Like maybe you should be the one running a YouTube channel and not me. And if that's the case, reach out, get in touch with us, and we can showcase your house if you're game, if that's the thing you want to do, and talk about some of the challenges or things that you've learned that we can all benefit from. I'm just one person, but the community is massive, and we could all learn together. Yeah, so this video is kind of the beginning of another chapter in this story of our channel, which is, energy shouldn't be this difficult. It shouldn't be so hard to predict. You shouldn't wake up one day and suddenly your bills double. That's what happened to people in San Diego, where SDG&E suddenly raised their rate for natural gas in January and February by like 100%, doubled your price at the heart of the coldest winter we've ever had. You can imagine, how would you feel, right? If suddenly your bill went from $100, $200 a month to $700. I have friends that have small, normal, average homes, smaller than ours, that had that happen to them. And that's infuriating, right? And we can do better. And we don't need them, right? We can be self-reliant. I've always said certain companies, certain products you buy, you're not just buying a product, you're buying an obligation for life. If you buy a internal combustion engine car, I know they're cheaper, there's benefits to them. You're not just buying a car, even if you pay it off. You have bought a lifetime subscription to Shell and Chevron and to BP to be a customer for life, because you are never going to make your own gasoline. But for 3 weeks now, I have literally spent zero on driving my car, because I have charged my car at the peak time when there's so much extra energy. Instead of exporting it, I've been charging my car. That's kind of the thing, right? So I'm a fan of products where you aren't a lifetime customer to anything, and you can save money on the long haul. I would rather pay money to have solar, where I break even after so many years, and then after that it's pure profit and it's mine. You get nothing from paying your utility company money. All you're doing is lining the shareholder pocket, the pockets of the shareholders, which is fine. If you're an investor, buy the buy the stock of energy companies, but you don't have to be a customer, right? Or at least that's the thinking. At the very least, be prepared for emergencies, and that could be a good start. Any other comments, Juan? I don't know how long we've been going for here, but yeah, I've been going for about an hour. Dusty's on. What is Dusty saying? So in case you guys are wondering, I always keep saying Juan. Juan is our head editor. He does all the camera work. He's the lead visual design for the company. Dusty is kind of our new producer. So Dusty is a person who was just a viewer, a fan. He talked to us on Twitter. He joined our Discord. And I was so blown away with just how in the know he was that I literally hired him to be our producer. Sorry, could you put that back up again? Does it automatically time out? So that's when I say I appreciate you guys and this is a community, I mean it. So Dusty says energy is all that matters at the end of the day. All of life is energy. Yeah, it's true, right? Every breakthrough is about managing energy, or cars, or a gasoline car is just a management of energy as well. You have to run big electric drills to refine it, to drill it out, to pump it, to ship it, to produce it, to run a car. It's all energy. And we live in an era where we don't need to be beholden to anybody. Like when Edison and Tesla were fighting for AC and DC, for the future of grids and distribution, they didn't imagine a world where for a decent amount of money, and solar's expensive, but honestly, it's not that bad. They did not imagine a world where individuals could produce their own energy and not need a grid at all. So stay tuned for future videos. We'll do microgrids and stuff. We're actually going to Italy in a couple of weeks to meet with a company called ABB. And they are working on some really cool stuff that we can share with you. We'll share more with you guys on in a little bit. But they have some really cool stuff around DC microgrids that are going to be really, really cool. So we'll talk more about that later on. I'm just going to grab the laptop and check out the comments here if there's anything else. But Jad Clough, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, says Ricky needs a larger font. So this software that we're doing, where we're having your comments on screen, this is all new. It's a new software that we've only just been using for a little bit. But one I've just noticed is this screen that runs the teleprompter needs to be, you're going the different other way. We need to make the font a little bit easier to read. Yeah. So we might need another computer. 3 computers? One to run this, and yeah. Okay. We're figuring this out together, guys. I appreciate it. Steven says, if we could get the home robotic vacuum cleaner to teach the self-parking EV to connect to the grid. You make this joke, but that reality is like a year away. Topic for another day. We've actually talked a little bit about AI, which we'll touch on more going forward as well. But it's a kind of a crazy world, honestly. I almost feel like you take a week and just unwind, and it leaves you behind, which is kind of a scary thought. But you got to keep your finger on the pulse, and we will try to hear and share our thoughts and findings with all of you guys. I love you guys. Some of these comments are so good. Did you put one up there? Yeah. So Richard Gould says, like button, friendly reminder from local neighborhood. Awesome. Thank you, Richard. Yes. The like button is one of those, it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. You got something?
He's blue.
Oh, that's Blue Raver. Okay. So we're allowed to have avatars or like screen names on our Discord. Which one? Could you put a link to our Discord? You have to go to Discord and get the share link. It changes. But our Discord is a great place to join as well. And on Discord, you can have your own screen name. So I actually don't know your names in some of the cases. So Richard, I've been chatting with Richard for a long time. I never knew his name was Richard. Thank you. Appreciate that. And now I'll remember that. So Debunk the Junk says, after AI takes out humanity, it will solve the energy crisis. So we have nothing to worry about, I guess. That's good news. So Vid After Dark says, what location to submit actual work done with home generation? So let me build some sort of a form or something for people to share. On our next live stream, we'll try to launch that, where community members who have really cool off-grid stuff can showcase some of their stuff.
I just do that on Discord.
Yeah. So did you put the Discord link?
Yep.
You did? Okay. Let's see if I see it. I don't see it. Where did you add it? So Lauren says, how far are you from the ocean? I'm about 10 miles. Yeah, so Stephen Brickwood says vehicles are parked 23 hours a day. I completely agree. I think if we move to more lithium iron phosphate battery chemistries in electric vehicles, which we are, some of the new Teslas that are rolling out of, for example, the Giga Austin factory are the 4680 in lithium iron phosphate chemistry, which means much, much longer cycle lives. And in that case, then running your home when you're not running the car is a really good option. My concern with my concern with traditional NMC or NCA chemistries, the stuff that are more energy dense and typically make their way into electric cars, is they have shorter lifetimes. And if you're running your house with it, it's going to eat into and degrade the range more quickly, right? And so some companies might not want that. But if we have lithium iron phosphate batteries that are good for 7,000 charge cycles, like deep charge cycles, that battery will power your house and your car for like 15 plus years without any worry. And I think at that point, it's going to be kind of a no-brainer. The vehicle to grid, vehicle to X, vehicle to home debate is interesting. A lot of the Tesla fans that I chat with, they think we don't need it, just buy a Powerwall, which is kind of crazy because you're just buying more and more products and you're using more battery supply, which could go to other customers, right? I'm a fan of vehicle to home. I think we should have it, but yeah, I think it'll be a little bit chemistry dependent. But the good news is I think a lot of companies are moving to lithium iron phosphate batteries. You might have, especially in bigger cars, like on a bigger truck, the extra weight, the lower energy density might not be as much of a problem. So split sleeve time says, can you talk about how you shave? This is so we get a comment about my shaving on every video I ever make. This might be the first time on a live stream actually, but it's a weird, yeah, it's a weird thing. If I fully shave, I have this like baby face. It doesn't look good. You would agree with me if you saw it, trust me. And if I grow a beard, I also look weird. So neither. Right here, the 5 o'clock shadow. That's a patented look. So Vid After Dark says this is a good chance the hydrogen will come out ahead. So look, I'm not as an engineer, I believe in diversity of options because if more smart people are working on options from around the world, you never know which one might take. Maybe there's some new breakthrough in hydrogen that works out. I don't know about hydrogen for consumer cars. I think batteries we're there already, and imagine how much better they're going to get every passing year. But hydrogen maybe for energy storage, larger vessel shipping. There's a whole slew of some really interesting options out there. In fact, there's a company that makes a hydrogen energy storage system for homes, and I've reached out to them. I haven't heard back just yet, but if I ever do, and they give me some access to go chat with them or something or try one out, I will totally do that. Compress hydrogen at home, kind of scary, but to be honest, like energy is scary. The more energy you have in a smaller package, that's scary, right? That's why nuclear is scary. That's why highly energy dense batteries are scary. Gasoline is scary. You ever seen a car fire? It's kind of scary when all that energy is released, but we need to store energy. The future is going to be electric. Mark that down. That's a prediction I'm 100% sure of. The future is going to be electric. Gasoline is not going to be competitive. Coal was not competitive years ago. Even like natural gas peaker power plants will not be competitive. Nuclear is not going to be competitive. I think, we're going to see a world where electrification is going to take over all parts of different industries. Just a matter of time. So producing and storing it is paramount. And we don't need anybody to help us. We can do that literally ourselves with our own homes. And that's the part that I nerd about all the time. All right. I think that is a good place to wrap up. What do you think, Juan? We're good? Ethanol. Let's go. Brandon says ethanol, ethanol, ethanol. Ethanol is really interesting. The challenge there is how you grow it, right? Because we have a food shortage too. So now you're using farmland to grow something not for eating. So there's some challenges, but it is a pretty carbon neutral alternative because you're growing something to then burn and grow and burn. Is kind of an interesting philosophy, but could be. Ethanol is amazing. As far as fuels go, ethanol is just a killer. It's way better than natural petroleum. So I'm a big fan. The future, we'll end with this. One of the most prophetic comments I've ever seen from Chris Curran, who says, "The future is the future." I think he just might be right. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, a lot of the topics that we talked about today, we'll make full dedicated videos about into the future. I think we're entering an era where some of these things just can't wait anymore, and I will definitely share it all with you. Thanks so much for watching. As we mentioned, a lot of really fun stuff coming up. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, join us for the ride, and be a part of the community. Join our Discord, and that way you can chime in. We have a lot of really cool conversations around solar and cars, batteries, alternative stuff, future tech, all kinds of really cool nerdy things that we can jam out about. And you would be surprised how much we learn from some of our Discord conversations and stuff. A lot of our future videos that we make come from some of you guys. So join the group, join the 2-Bit tribe, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks so much for watching.